I've recently fallen in love with the Digitakt all over again, and I'm going to show you the latest piece of music I've been working on and explain exactly why I love it so much. You'll notice that the pattern is already playing, and I'll explain why after we get through the jam. Chapter markers are below if you want to skip to the good stuff, and let's get into it. Oh wait, I almost forgot. So that's the premise of the jam. It seems really simple, right? And it's just one pattern. And as you can probably see, it's built up of 2 sets of 4 components each. And I'm just going to talk to you about each of those 4 components now. And I'm actually going to start with what I think is kind of the most interesting part of the track. And that is track number 8. So I'm going to turn off this LFO. And as you can see, it is set to the sample destination. I have another one for the bit rate, just for some sonic variance, but this is our sample. I'm going to turn that delay down too. All of these samples, by the way, are from Blank Form's Tape Haze 3. It was the first sample pack I put on the Digitakt, and I wanted to just kind of go back to my roots and see what I could come up with. Anyways, here's our sample. But because I have this LFO sent to the sample source, you can look at our source page and see all of these good samples. Some guitar samples from my friends, some stock samples. I've got some OP1 samples. Every time you hit play, and every time you move the depth knob, it's going to give you something different. So you can play around with this once you have a good bank of samples lined up in a project. And this is why I had the project playing, or the pattern playing, before I started, because even if you don't move the LFO dial, because it's set to freeform, it's gonna catch on different samples depending on when you hit the play button, based on how the trigs are aligned, if that makes any sense. But what's interesting is you can use the LFO mode to set to trig, and that way it's going to reset at every trig, and if you put it at positive polarity, it's going to catch the sample above what you have or below what you have. And the hold mode is going to react differently, and the one shot is going to kind of act the same as the trig because we have trigs on every step of this sequence. So by basically hitting play and finding a point in the wave where you just have percussive sounds, you give yourself 3 different patches on the same track by changing from the freeform to the trig. And then if you remember where you set your LFO, you can go back. So we have that. We have a really simple kick and snare pattern. And then we have this, which I absolutely love. This sounds really crazy and busy, but it's really quite simple. As you can see, we have trigs on every step. Actually, no, not on every step. It's on the wrong track there. But we have trigs on most of the steps. And again, we have a mild LFO on the filter bass, but the sample tune is what's causing this to go crazy. Otherwise, it's just this kind of transient, heavy tom-like sample with some resonance there. But I mean, listen to how much that changes it. It makes it sound all warped and wild. And that doesn't sound bad, but this just sounds so much better. And so if you start up the pattern again, you can get these interesting rhythmic variations going on. By again, just going to this LFO on track 8. And it doesn't all sound good. In fact, I'd argue that most of it doesn't sound good. But then you get like cool vibey rhythms like this. And you can still switch to this. So remember, we're at 102-ish, negative 102. So let's get back to our home base and then go. Or we lost it, but there we go. And then sometimes it'll be really cool if you just like add in your other elements. Sometimes the tune doesn't quite fit, but you get some cool dissonance. And then when you're ready, just switch it back here and bring in your other tracks. So it gives you this really cool opportunity to take your percussion section, which is just 4 tracks, and really spice it up by being pretty heavy on your trig placement. And I didn't intentionally set this project up to have these samples in any particular order. This is all totally random. And to be honest, it kind of reminds me of my modular days playing with the Make Noise Morphogene and just feeding it a bunch of wacky LFOs and seeing what sounds that you can come up with that are still rhythmically related to the rest of the piece you're working on. Let's talk about how I started off this piece, because it started off as a little ambient groove. I began by just selecting this little patch, and I have all these trigs down, and I have the sample start time. On an LFO, because as you can see, the actual trig itself is just being reset. Unless we move this. Whoops. Unless we move this here, and now you can see the sample is jumping around, tons of reverb and delay, and it's just this nice rhythmic drone. Next, obviously we have here a bass synth. Again, it's a sample from Blank Forms. I'm just letting it sort of play through. And I have a exponential waveform sidechaining it to the kick drum. So this is without the LFO. And there's with the LFO. Just a really simple trick that I use all the time that you've probably seen if you've watched any of my Digitakt videos. Let's do track 3 now. This is one of my favorites. It's just this sample here, and I've just tuned these trigs to different pitches, and then for these syncopated hits, I have adjusted the filter. The filter bass, I've cut it way down because these notes are much more high pitched. So if the bass was all the way up, it'd sound like that, and I think that's just a little bit nicer sounding. So it's not too bright, because our element of brightness is this patch here, which I have just taken this sample, which is, extremely high passed, extremely resonant, delay, reverb, panning, everything. Lots of LFOs applied. It's just kind of like a normal, it's a single monophonic synth note. That I've basically turned into an arpeggio. And all of this automation information, that's just panning. So it really fills up the stereo field, So everything together, all the melodic elements sound like this. And there's our out of tune sample, which again is why I hit play and made sure that I found a spot where I knew it was going to be straight ahead notes, and then I could transition into this straight ahead hi-hat pattern on the trig mode of the LFO. Another super fun thing to do is to hold track and manipulate the tune knob. I accidentally did it with a function. So let's reload that pattern. And there we go. So we have these 4 and these 4 kind of acting independently, acting separately, and we can meld them together to create one whole song. We can leave it all ambient. We can start with a drum groove with some experimental parameter locking, and it really just gives us a lot of options to play around all within the same pattern. And I've never really worked with the Digitakt like this. What I typically do is work on an idea in one pattern, copy and paste it, and create a progression to kind of, build a song up. But this is a super fun creative exercise. If you have a lot of samples you like that work well together, just play around with the LFO. There's really so much it can do. Go to town. As always, I appreciate you watching and hanging out. Enjoy whatever you got going on today, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.